Open the hood of the vehicle. Prepare a protective surface to place vehicle components on. Disconnect the negative battery cable. Ensure that the negative terminal of the dual battery is also disconnected if applicable. Using a panel tool, remove the climate control panel pulling directly away from its rested position. Disconnect the two factory connectors. Remove the two 7mm screws securing the radio trim panel and carefully pry away by hand. Use your hand to support the head unit in place and then loosen the four 7mm screws holding the radio in place. Make sure that the radio is secure in your hand to prevent from falling or being damaged during removal. Take note of the factory connectivity. We recommend taking a picture of the back of the head unit so you can ensure all connections return to the original locations. Disengage the 5 connectors from the back of the head unit. Stow head unit away safely. Under the steering column, remove the knee bolster panel by pulling directly away from its rested position. This panel has 4 clips that hold it in place. Remove the two 7mm screws holding the steering wheel shroud in place. Lifting the shroud out of position provides more access for the harness run and amplifier mounting location. Harness installation. Use a snake or large zip tie for fishing the following connectors to and from the radio cavity. Install the integration interface receiver harness. Connect the main factory system connection and engage the locking mechanism. Carefully run the 22-pin integration interface connection to under the steering column towards the amplifier mounting location. Run the 8-pin speaker signal connection of the quick-sync wiring harness from under the steering column to the radio cavity. Connect the 8-pin connection to the corresponding connection on the integration interface receiver harness. Position the quick-sync wiring harness and power wire on the inside of the bracketing under the steering column. On the kick panel, remove the plastic wiring access door. Disconnect the door wiring harness. First, push the red locking tab upward to unlock the harness. Push and hold down on the security tab, and at the same time, lift up the harness lever. Pull the harness straight down to disconnect. Store the wiring connector in the lower door basket. Use a panel tool to pry the connector away from the kick panel location. Loosen the 10mm nut securing the panel in place. Once hardware is loosened, remove the kick panel and threshold by pulling directly towards the passenger side of the vehicle. Remove panel from workspace. Loosen the 10mm ground nut and install the harness ground together on the ground location and reinstall the 10mm nut. Hand tighten and use socket to secure. Power wire installation. Under the hood, identify the grommet on the driver's side of the vehicle and remove. Pass the 2 power wires through the grommet location. With a 5/16 drill bit, drill an opening on the grommet location right in the middle. Pass the 2 power wires through the grommet location. Restore grommet to its original location, sealing the firewall. Use silicone sealant as necessary. In the interior, we recommend verifying your harness lengths under the steering column for the amplifier connectivity prior to proceeding. The main amplifier connection and the sub-amplifier green connection should be able to reach the middle of the 2 vertical supports underneath the steering column with ease. Under the hood, remove the 5 10mm nuts across the firewall. Removing this hardware allows access to the wire channel for running the power wire. Lift the water reservoir out of its rested position and angle in such a way so that it is out of the way for the power wire run. Use a flathead screwdriver or pick tool to release the retainer clips for the factory conduit to disengage the 9 clips on the conduit from the driver's side all the way to the engine compartment fuse box. Lift and remove the lid of the engine compartment fuse box. Run the 2 power wires the length of the channel inside the conduit to the opening closest to the fuse box 12-volt ring terminals. Trim power wire to the appropriate length if necessary. Use a wire stripper to strip 3/8 of an inch off the end of each power wire. Connect the power wire to the fuse holder by inserting the 10-gauge strip power wire into the yellow butt connector and crimp. Apply heat to activate the solder and heat shrink insulator for the best connection possible. Repeat for secondary power wire. Do not install the fuses at this time. However, the A power wire will receive the 20-amp fuse, and the B power wire will receive the 30-amp fuse. On the fuse block, remove the factory 10mm flange nut and install the ring terminal of the fuse holders. Reinstall the 10mm nut and tighten. Do not install the fuses at this time. Return the fuse cover lid and seal the conduit, reinstalling retainer clips, water reservoir, and nuts in reverse order. Subwoofer umbilical preparation. Plug the provided C13 adapter into the subwoofer umbilical cable. Position the 4-pin side of the adapter underneath the steering column between the 2 vertical supports. Run the length of the subwoofer umbilical cable alongside the driver's side threshold towards the rear of the vehicle. Disengage the driver's side B-pillar trim panel by pulling directly towards the passenger side of the vehicle from the lower portion of the panel and working your way up to disengage the clips. Continue to run the umbilical alongside the driver's side threshold towards the rear. Stage the umbilical on the floor of the rear driver's side for the time being. Reinstall the B-pillar panel, door threshold, kick panel, window door harness connection, and the plastic wiring access door. Tweeter installation. Use a panel tool to carefully lift the dash speaker grill up out of position. Remove the 2 screws holding the factory dash speaker in place and remove the speaker. Disconnect the factory dash speaker. Position the OEM Audio Plus 1-inch soft dome tweeter in position and reinstall the dash speaker connector. Mount the tweeter using the original factory hardware. Reinstall the dash speaker grill and repeat this process for the other side of the vehicle. Dash disassembly. Passenger side dash speaker installation. Remove the single 7mm screw near the radio cavity of the center dash panel. Carefully pull panel directly towards the rear of the vehicle, not upward or at an angle. Ensure that all metal clips are released. Note, this panel is tight in its rested position, therefore easing out of position inch by inch from left to right side, releasing all the locking retainer clips is the best practice. Use a panel tool to remove the 2 outer panel covers of the passenger side grab handle to reveal the hardware. Loosen the 10mm bolts to remove the grab handle. Remove trim garnish, pulling directly towards the rear of the vehicle. Ensure all clips disengage with the trim piece. remove the two 7mm screws on the bottom of the passenger side dash bezel. Remove the four 7mm screws on the top of the passenger side dash bezel. Glove box removal. Open the glove box and disengage the glove box damper on the driver's side. Squeeze the sides of the glove box and pull down and out in one motion to remove. Remove the two 13mm airbag support bolts. Prepare to remove the passenger side dash bezel from its position. Disconnect airbag connection and stow away safely. Remove the 7mm screw closest to the furthest air vent on the passenger side. Using a panel tool, remove the dash side panel. Remove the 8 7mm screws. Remove the three 7mm screws under the glove box opening. And the one remaining 7mm screw at the 7 o'clock position of the passenger side vent. Pull this panel directly towards the rear of the vehicle from its rested position, gaining access to the passenger side mid-range speaker. Remove the two 7mm screws holding the factory speaker assembly in place. Disconnect the factory speaker assembly connector. Remove the three No. 2 Phillips screws holding the factory speaker in place on the vented enclosure. Disconnect the internal speaker connector and remove the speaker. Install the provided batting. Install the OEM Audio Plus 4-inch wideband speaker by reinstalling the speaker connector and using the three factory screws. Reconnect the speaker assembly connector and reinstall the speaker assembly in its factory location. Reassemble passenger side dash panel, glove box, airbag, side dash garnish, side dash bezel, and all the related panels in reverse order, taking time to ensure that all hardware and clips are engaged securely. Driver side speaker installation. Remove the two 7mm screws at the 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock position of the headlight dimmer controls. Using a panel tool, remove the dash side panel. Remove the 8 7mm screws. Remove the four 7mm screws of the instrument panel. This is to assist with access to the two remaining 7mm screws at the 11 o'clock and 5 o'clock position of the driver's side air vent. Pull this panel directly towards the rear of the vehicle. Disconnect the headlight dimmer control panel, gaining access to the driver's side dash speaker. You can either remove the factory speaker assembly or install the OEM Audio Plus 4-inch wideband in place. Remove the three No. 2 Phillips screws holding the factory speaker in place on the vented enclosure. Disconnect the internal speaker connector and remove the speaker. Install the provided batting and install the OEM Audio Plus 4-inch wideband speaker by reinstalling the speaker connector and using the 3 factory screws. Reassemble the headlight dimmer controls, instrument panel, side panel, and all related panels and hardware in the reverse order, taking time to ensure that all clips and hardware are engaged securely. Reinstall the center dash panel carefully, ensuring that all metal clips and panel are engaged. Reinstall the single 7mm screw associated with this panel. Amplifier assembly prep. Amplifier assembly and integration interface will install directly under the steering column. If the factory power inverter or cold weather module is present, your OEM Audio Plus bracket has provisions for these accessories. Instructions to follow. Remove the 10mm bolts on the outer cross brace and the 8mm bolts on the lower inner cross brace. Disconnect the factory module if applicable. Transfer the factory module from the factory bracket by removing the 4 number 2 Phillips screws and install the module onto the OEM Audio Plus amplifier assembly with dedicated sub-amplifier. The factory screws will be utilized for this transfer. Amplifier installation. Remove the lower 10mm bolt from both the vertical support braces, one from the bottom and the other from the face. Remove the left vertical brace completely for a clear workspace by removing the top 8mm bolt. For the sake of a clear demonstration, we are showing the connectivity to the dedicated sub-amplifier prior to installation under the steering column. Plug the green power and ground connector into its designated receptacle. Plug the C13 adapter associated with the subwoofer umbilical into the speaker output receptacle on the same side of the amplifier. On the other side of the sub-amplifier, install the gain control cable and the 4-pin signal connection from the main power amplifier with built-in digital signal processor. Reconnect the factory module connector at this time if applicable. Install the sub-amplifier assembly by positioning the bracket over the outer cross brace. Bracket mounting points will line up with the factory 10mm and 8mm locations on the outer and inner cross braces. Perform the previously outlined sub-amplifier connections at this time, and then secure hardware mounting. Reinstall the left vertical brace by returning the top 8mm bolt and the lower 10mm bolt from the bottom. The OEM Audio Plus amplifier suite features the multi-channel power amplifier with calibrated digital signal processor and the integration interface, which preserves all factory electronic functionality. The optical cable for full digital signal communicating between these two devices will be pre-installed. Connect the integration interface connection to the pre-ran 22-pin connection. Amplifier assembly mounts between the outer and inner cross braces. Reinstall the 2 8mm bolts of the lower inner cross brace. Reinstall the single lower 10mm bolt on the right vertical brace with the amplifier assembly bracket. Install the provided 10mm bolt and flange nut into the available hardware location on the top left bracket mounting location. Plug the 20-pin connection of the quick sync wiring harness into its designated receptacle on the DSP power amplifier. On the other side of the power amplifier, plug the 2-pin signal connection associated with the sub-amplifier. Install the blue remote turn-on connection. In the event disconnection occurred during installation, install the fiber optic connection into the optical receptacle on the DSP amplifier. This connection not being completely seated could result in no sound post-installation. Return the steering wheel shroud to its original location. Reinstall the 2 7mm screws. Reinstall the knee bolster panel, ensuring all clips are fully engaged. Reassemble head unit. Install the main connection of the quick sync wiring harness connection to the head unit. Return all remaining factory connections that were originally plugged in back into the head unit. Reinstall the head unit with the 4 factory 7mm screws and the trim panel with the 2 lower 7mm screws. Return the 2 factory connectors to the climate control panel and reinstall, ensuring all clips are fully engaged. Subwoofer umbilical continued. Lift the carpet on the driver's side of the cargo area, exposing the desired cable route for the umbilical. Run the umbilical through the supporting beam in the cargo area to prevent the cable from being in the pathway of the window hinge mechanism. Return the carpet to its rested position in the cargo area. Lifting the carpet on the floor, run the umbilical across the cargo threshold to the passenger side of the vehicle. Continue the run of the umbilical above the passenger side wheel well. Position the umbilical nearest to the carpet opening by the passenger side rear roll bar mount. Position about 6 inches of umbilical cable accessible for the subwoofer. Remove the factory carpet retention clip with a 16mm socket. To prevent the umbilical from moving out of position, we recommend using a cable tie holder adhesive clip. Use an alcohol wipe and apply 1 or 2 cable tie holder clips. Use cable ties as necessary and do not over tighten. Reinstall the carpet in reverse order. This concludes the cargo portion of the installation. Use a T50 Torx bit to remove the 2 front hardtop bolts from the interior body side. Use a T25 Torx to remove the 2 screws on the rear passenger side carpet trim piece. Position the OEM Audio Plus subwoofer system into position. Plug the umbilical into the subwoofer connection. Subwoofer bracket slides underneath the hardtop interior body side lip, and the provided OEM Audio Plus hardware runs through the factory hardware openings to the bracket. Position the rear passenger side carpet trim piece and reinstall the factory T25 hardware with the front subwoofer mounting bracket in position. Soundbar speaker installation. Remove the 4 5mm hex bolts off the speaker grill. Remove the factory tweeter by removing the 2 T20 Torx bolts. Disconnect the factory speaker connector. Install the OEM Audio Plus 1-inch soft dome tweeter, connecting the factory connector and reinstalling the factory hardware. Remove the factory mid driver by removing the 3 T20 Torx bolts. Disconnect the factory speaker connector. Install the provided batting into the sound bar enclosure for intended rich sound reproduction. Install the OEM Audio Plus 4-inch wideband speaker, connecting the factory speaker connector and reinstalling the factory hardware. Return the 4 5mm hex bolts of the speaker grill and repeat this process on the other side of the vehicle. Under the hood, install the fuses at this time, reconnect the battery to its original configuration, and close the hood. This concludes the OEM Audio Plus Signature Edition installation for the 4th generation Jeep Wrangler JL. Start your engine, turn on your system, and enjoy.